Yes, hello everyone. We are live. I wasn't sure if we were live yet, but we are live. Welcome everyone. I hope everyone is getting ready for a great Thanksgiving with their family and loved ones. My name is Dustin Robinson. I'm your host for Investor Hotseat, where we ask the tough questions that CEOs need to be prepared to answer. Since this show is about investing, couple quick disclaimers. We're not soliciting investment on this show, and we encourage you to read the full terms and conditions on the psychedelicinvest.com homepage. The agenda for each one of these episodes is that we will have a CEO give a 5-minute presentation of their company. That will be followed by a 30 to 35-minute Q&A by myself, and then we will reserve 5 to 10 minutes for a Q&A from the audience. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, you don't need to wait till the end. Just drop them in the Dropbox, and we will make sure that we do get to them at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the CEO of Beckley Retreats, Neil Markey. Neil, I'm going to pass it to you. You have 5 minutes, and you are on the clock.
Thanks, Dustin. Hello, everyone. My name's Neil Markey. I started my professional career in the military. I joined after 9/11. I went to Iraq once and Afghanistan twice. Part of that was with the Ranger Regiment, and it left quite a mark on me. Luckily, I found psychedelics and meditation about 10 years ago with other holistic well-being practices, and I would say that they saved my life. I had a few years where I went quite deep on meditation, spiritual practices, non-traditional modalities, and experimented with a lot of psychedelics. I ended up doing a teacher certification in meditation, and then went on to lead the mindfulness program at McKinsey Company, and was also a successful turnaround executive for mid-sized distributed services businesses, but ended up back in a bad place in terms of well-being. I was chasing money, chasing prestige. And so a few years ago, I left and got back to what I knew that was helpful, and that's meditation and these plants. And this project that I'm working on now, Beckley Retreats, has all come out of that quite organically. And I think that's a good signal that we're working on something that is in alignment with me. And Beckley Retreats the name comes from the Beckley Foundation, and Amanda Fielding was the founder and executive director of the foundation, which is one of the world's leading research nonprofits for psychedelics. And together we've co-founded Beckley Retreats, which is the continuance of her vision to bring psychedelics safely to the world. And so we have a comprehensive well-being program that includes psychedelics. It's 11 weeks long, and it includes a holistic well-being approach. We are operating in Jamaica and the Netherlands, where psilocybin is legal, and our programs are 11 weeks long. The first 4 weeks of the program is digital preparation. So we get the groups connected. Doing this work together in groups is very important. And we teach the basic well-being practices. So we teach meditation, we teach mindful movement, we teach breathwork exercises, we encourage healthy diet changes, and we get the group accountability started. And then we bring people down in person to these beautiful locations that are deep in nature. Nature is part of the healing as well. And we do those practices together in groups. We encourage a digital detox to get people off their devices. And then we are practicing meditation and mindful movement together. And then in those 6 days, we have 2 psilocybin sessions. Those are medium to high dose, and those are done in groups. And we have a team of 5 to 6 facilitators that facilitate those sessions. And they're a mix of Western trained psychotherapists and indigenous professionals. But usually on our teams, we have many decades of experience in this work. And we really try to bring this blended West meets East, science meets traditional blending of practices. And the sessions usually last about 6 hours. And then they're followed up by group integration with a kind of Western research-based approach. And then importantly, on the back end of these experiences, we have 6 weeks of digital integration. So that's an hour call each week with the group, and then a lot of asynchronous exercises. Because from a neuroscience perspective, what it really looks like is that with these high doses of psychedelics, you put the brain into a more malleable or plastic state. And you can give people just the experiences, and oftentimes they'll have a bit of a glow for a couple weeks after. But if you don't do any work, it's likely that the brain is just going to go back to the way it was. But if you're intentional and you have the support and you have a structured approach, you can do a lot with those few weeks after. So that's why we think that the integration is really important. And we think that we're bringing something new into the world by having this comprehensive approach. And the feedback's been incredible. I mean, we are, helping people make very significant positive change in their lives. We've had people say things like, to say this was the most meaningful experience of my life would be an understatement. To share one story, I had a friend of mine that was a former Green Beret officer come on a program, and he was a skeptic. He didn't believe in what we were doing, but he trusted me, and he ended up coming to the Netherlands. And a week after the program, he called me and he said, Neil, my life's different now. He said that my 4-year-old son would never want to come to me in the evening. I didn't know why. And now his son was coming to him instead of going to just his mom. And we don't know all the mechanics of what's happening there, but he's presenting in the world differently. Something's changed with his central nervous system and that his son is picking up on. So what an amazing gift to be able to give someone kind of a fresh start to in a relationship with their child. And that's just one of the many stories that I could share from the guests that we get to bring through our programs. So I hope that some of you can come down soon.
Perfect. Yeah, you nailed it right in the 5-minute time frame, Neil. Great to see you. Happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And full disclaimer, our fund has invested in Beckley Retreats. So not most of our CEOs we've had on are not portfolio companies of ours. So definitely a different type of show today. But don't worry, audience, my gloves are coming off and we're gonna make sure Neil is in the hot seat. So, one of the first questions I always ask pretty much on the show is, as an investor, I always like to know the why. I like to know why the founders get started. And you touched on the why, in your little intro, but I think it's worth really double clicking and getting a little bit more background on really some of the work you've done really with the veterans groups and all the other stuff that you've done in the psychedelic industry. So could you give us a little bit more background, and we'll get into after that some of the history on Beckley as well, but I'd like to focus on you for a minute. What's some of the stuff you were doing in the industry and what really led you to, launching this retreat you have?
Yeah. I mean, I come into this work through my own trauma. I got out of the special operations community, and I went to Columbia University for grad school. And I was doing well professionally. I was at a good school. I'd been a highly ranked officer, and I was getting job offers at places like McKinsey and BCG. But I was miserable inside. I was absolutely miserable inside. There was a point where I didn't really want to be around anymore. I was drinking. I was isolating, although I was, high functioning. And I tried lots of traditional approaches, SSRIs, anti-anxiety medications. I still think I've tried every sleeping pill that's known. And a lot of those approaches, they would work for a while and then they wouldn't, or the side effects were worse than the original symptoms, and nothing worked. And what I found that actually started to work first was meditation. And it was hard because it took work, but I had the soldier's discipline, and I was able to sit, and I had this deep intuitive knowingness that it was good for me, and it helped. And then through that same network, I had, my first experience with psilocybin about 10 years ago. And it was the first time I'd done it with attention and with the hopes of being able to heal. And it was profound. I mean, it completely opened my eyes up to this different way of living and being. And then I had these handful of years where I really studied and experimented and tried to read and learn from others. So then I got to see the power that was in these plants that have been used for thousands of years by indigenous communities all over the world, and are in all different spiritual traditions. And I saw the light. So for me, it's a personal endeavor. I know the benefit. And, from the military perspective, there's a couple really amazing nonprofit organizations that we work with closely, and they're friends of mine: Heroic Hearts, VETS, which is Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, and they're saving guys' lives. There's guys that are near suicide and like barely getting out of bed in the morning, and getting them down into mostly Mexico and giving the opportunity to do programs, good programs with psychedelics. And guys are coming back and excited to continue their lives and hugging on their wives and their kids. And I mean, it's for particular indications, it seems to be significantly better than a lot of the tools that we have in today's system. So it's really important to get this out to more people safely.
Love it. And so, usually I just ask the CEO what his background is, but I think in this situation, it's a little different just because there's so much history with the Beckley Foundation, and you referenced some of that also in your intro, but would love to hear more about just the history of the Beckley Foundation. And they've really mainly focused a lot on research and science. They launched Beckley SciTech, which is their kind of biotech arm. What led them? Why did, if you give us a little history, but also tell us what led them to deciding that they thought it was important that they also launched a retreat?
Well, so Amanda Fielding is the icon here, right? And she is just an incredible human with an incredible story. She had some mystical experiences in her childhood with psychedelics, and she just knew instantly, like, wow, this could help people in a profound way, and maybe even help solve some of these huge macro problems that we have in the world that are around unwell people and lack of awareness and lack of compassion. And she's dedicated her entire life to this work. She's going to turn 80 next year. She's still working 12-hour days trying to push through research. And, so she created the foundation 25 years ago, and she was able to really, through willpower and charisma, corral a lot of the world's leading scientists to study this. And it was the Beckley Foundation that has led a lot of this research over the last couple decades that is the foundation of what we're standing on today, bringing this work to the world. So, I mean, her and Rick Doblin at MAPS, and a handful of others have really been stewarding this work when a lot of the world thought they were completely nuts. And, Amanda's organization did a lot of the scientific studies around psilocybin and depression and what happens in the brain when you use LSD and studied it. And then they've also done a lot of policy work around drug reform, right? Like, why are these things Schedule 1? Why is it so hard for us to do research? So they've been pushing that fight forward for decades as well. And, but Amanda's vision was always, not to stay in the labs. It was like, let's get it to the people. But she knew that we had to prove, scientifically before the West would wake up to it. And so now we're at this new phase, which is super beautiful, which is we're getting it to the people. And so her and her sons and a few other supporters then went on and formed Beckley Waves and Beckley SciTech and some other organizations that are like building the infrastructure to get these compounds out to people safely. And Beckley Retreats, I think, myself included, I think there's always going to be a place for clinics. I think that doing ketamine in clinics with a one-on-one with a therapist is really good. It shows it's super helpful for treatment-resistant depression and anxiety, and the data looks great, so we should continue that. But the retreat model is different. And you can do a lot more in the retreats. And, groups is important, right? Like, part of what we're solving is some of this disconnection, and groups is, doing it in groups is really beautiful. Being in nature is really important. Having a long form program where you can actually introduce space. The problem with clinics is you give someone a mystical experience and then they go home and they don't have any space for the brain to settle into these new ways of being before getting the stimulus from the outside world. So the retreat, I think we all agreed was like, a different method of delivering this stuff that could have potentially better outcomes for people long term. And to me, the psychedelic is the tool. It gets people's attention. It does do some things neurologically that helps the brain open up. But really what you want to do is teach people well-being practices. You need to get people to take better care of themselves. You need to give them better communities to interact with. So you got to have a comprehensive approach. And so that's what we're trying to do with retreats.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I got to witness firsthand that 12-hour workday with Amanda. I was in London last month, and I ended up staying at her house, and we arrived around like 6 p.m. And I thought, like, she's getting a little bit older. I thought she'd just send us to sleep and then we'd, talk in the morning. No, we were up till like 2 a.m. and then we went to sleep. And I thought when we went to sleep, okay, we went to sleep late, we'll wake up late and, maybe talk for a couple hours, then we'll be on our way. And no, she was ready to go 6 a.m. She was cooking us breakfast and she wanted to talk
And
business.
she wants to talk wants to talk brain scans and like.
Yeah, I was like, she had more energy than I do, and I tend to have a lot of energy myself. So she's a absolutely incredible woman,
She's
and it's
incredible.
very exciting to have her, kind of be a
Yeah.
pioneer in this industry. So
And,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say the other thing I love about her is that it's never been about the money for her or the prestige. It's always just been about helping people. It comes from such a pure place, and like I just appreciate that. We need more Amandas in the world.
Absolutely. All right, now let's jump into the company. So you mentioned in your intro that you guys are focused on psilocybin. So I'd love to kind of understand a little bit more. Are you guys exclusively using psilocybin? If so, why did you guys choose to use psilocybin? And why are you interested in this particular compound?
Yeah. We are exclusively using psilocybin now. Um, I envision a world where Beckley is, a trusted, place to experience all these different psychedelics. But we'll get there when the time is right. We chose psilocybin for quite a few reasons. One, the research is really clear on psilocybin. It's the one of the compounds that has like some of the most studies and it's exceptionally safe, right? It's non-toxic. It looks like it's neuroregenerative. People usually tolerate it very well. Some of the other psychedelics, you have a lot of nausea and sickness and vomiting. And psilocybin, you can give people these really powerful mystical experiences, but like the realm of possible is pretty well known. It's more controlled. And then with some other of the psychedelics, DNT, the toad or ayahuasca, there's lots of cultural sensitivity around these because they're harder to grow. And the natural versions now are having some negative impacts from all the demand. And so we want to be good stewards of this work, and we want to do it right. And psilocybin is easily grown. You can grow it locally. It's so we're not like destroying natural habitats of psilocybin, and there's not as much kind of cultural sensitivity around its use.
Great. And you you walked us through kind of the experience part of it, the preparation, administration, integration. It's a pretty long program that you guys have. I'd like to just go a little bit deeper into that. As far as like the intake, are there particular things where that would exclude
Yeah.
individuals? What does that intake look like? And what are you doing really from a safety perspective at that intake stage?
Yeah. So we have a really robust medical screening, suitability screening that everyone is required to complete. And, our programs right now are for the betterment of the well. We're non-clinical. We're not treating treatment-resistant depression. We're not treating PTSD. If people come to us, which they often do, and they have really serious indications, we point them to places that are more suited, have the right infrastructure to provide that level of care. Ours are more about people that want to improve professionally or become more creative. Now everybody's got their stuff, because we're human. So but we have to be mindful of the group dynamic and making sure that we have the right teams in place to be able to kind of meet the demands of the group. So if anything is flagged in the screening, we will follow up and have a call. But we tell a lot of people no. I mean, I hope that as we grow, we can treat a broader range of the trauma spectrum and help people that have more severe indications. But for now, we focus more on the betterment of the well for safety reasons.
And getting into the preparation part, you mentioned that there's, several weeks of preparation. Could you give us a little bit more detail? Is this, I know you're doing virtual sessions for
Mm-hmm.
preparation. Are these in groups? Does someone have one particular individual kind of leading the preparation? Is that person facilitating the preparation? Or are they also present for the administration? If you could just
Mm-hmm.
kind of just get into what someone would expect during preparation.
Yeah, it's a series of group calls. It's 2 group calls. You get to meet the group and you get to meet the facilitation team. And each of our teams has 2 senior facilitators. And then those senior facilitators we look for someone that has at least a decade of experience in Western psychotherapy as one individual. And then another senior facilitator has to have at least a decade of experience in indigenous traditions. Sometimes they can be the same person. Sometimes people have experience in both, but those are hard to find. So we pair up the ancient, the indigenous wisdom with the West, and then we fill in around them with individuals that have experience in meditation and mindful movement and yoga, and are also musicians, because during our sessions it's all live music, which is incredibly beautiful. You got to see it to believe it. And so you have those sessions, and then we have a digital app that everybody gets access to that has a lot of the content, and it's information around the central nervous system and the fight or flight response, and information around psilocybin and the benefits and the risks, and then a lot of like asynchronous exercises. You want to get clear on why you're coming, and you want to write it down, and you want to journal, and you want to get it all out. And then you kind of want to release it and trust that the experience is going to bring what it needs. But a lot of the work can kind of be done on your own when you have time in those 4 weeks previous. I guess a couple of other things, we do encourage some healthy lifestyle changes. It's really common for the type A overachievers that come on our programs to be in this cycle of uppers in the morning and downers in the evening, whether that's caffeine and alcohol or stimulants and prescription pills. And what's that? That's just really putting the central nervous system in a fight or flight response, and it's not good for these experiences. So you want to kind of help people taper down so that the central nervous system is more settled, and they're going to be less reactive to the experience. They're going to be able to go deeper. So we help people do that.
And you mentioned some of the different facilitators you're working with. As far as number one, what are some of the characteristics you're looking for in bringing on board the right facilitators? And number two, what type of training are you guys doing to make sure that these facilitators are, in a good position to provide a proper experience?
Yeah. So it's interesting. There's two sides to it. There's like a resume component, which, we want to see some demonstrated experience. We ask people literally the number of psilocybin sessions that they've facilitated, which are different than psychedelic assisted therapy sessions in a clinic, right? So we need to be mindful about that. We look for professional credentialing. So whether it's psychotherapy or integrative medicine, like those are meaningful to us and to our guests. But then there is a harder to quantify and evaluate, but very important part, which is their presence of being. So you can be well read on this stuff and have all the credentials in the world, but not be living it, and be a bit of a frantic mess, but an expert in well-being. I mean, we see this a lot. A lot of people are drawn to this work because of their own trauma, which is fine, but we need to make sure people have kind of done enough of their own work so that they're this steady presence, and that they are able to help facilitate others go through their experiences without being triggered or pushed off center. So it takes a lot of emotional maturity, and we do those types of tests through interviews. And then, before we would ever let someone lead a program, they need to come, and we have like a bit of a, they become an observer first, which means they come, they watch, we get to spend time with them. Our senior facilitators get to see the potential, in these individuals. And then the next, program, if they do well, they could come in as a normal facilitator, which means they have a little bit higher responsibility. And then they have to do that for quite some time before they could ever take the role of a senior facilitator and lead teams.
And what about on the training? I know Beckley has their kind of own academy. Is that a part of some of the training that you guys are doing?
Well, it will be. Academy is relatively new. So they're developing a program. So, right for now, we're really looking for facilitators that have a lot of training, that have a lot of experience. But, we have a really close relationship with Academy, and we will likely be a place where Academy participants that are going through their training can come and get some of their reps as observers. You know what I mean? Because a lot of this work it's reps. It's like you can learn a lot of it from books and from classes and things, but then you gotta do it. And so, we'll be able to provide Academy candidates with those opportunities, and hopefully they can kind of go through their full schooling and then come back and be facilitators for us.
Yeah, and speaking of reps, how many retreats has Beckley Retreats actually completed, and what were some of the lessons learned? Obviously, this is powerful medicine, and you really never know how people react to it. So I'm sure you guys have learned plenty from some of these different retreats. But how many have you guys completed, and what would you say are some of the important lessons learned from those retreats?
Yeah, we've done 7 under the Beckley banner, but again, it's a new organization, but the facilitators have been doing this stuff for decades. So it's kind of a new package, but we have like very highly trained individuals. And well, I mean, the learnings, this stuff works, right? Like people can have very profound, meaningful experiences. Um, the screening is really important. I think we learned, that sometimes people have mental health issues that they might not even be aware of, and so they answer the questions honestly, but they might not know that they have some history of bipolar disorder or something. So having protocols in place that identify those people early and then are able to manage that, and have different paths in the program to be able to still support them but not put them at risk is really important. And then there is this, we believe that there is something beautiful in this blend of Western scientific approach, data, and the indigenous tradition, right? With the ritual and the setting and the art of it, and we're working through that. But we've had some tension between those different philosophies and schools of thought, right? Where the indigenous perspective may think that the Western psychotherapy perspective or approach it's too hands-on, where the indigenous way is you give people the space, you give them the compounds, and you let the compounds do the work, and it's more hands-off. So we've had some of these debates, philosophical debates, which are challenging, because people are just trying to give people the best experience in what they believe, but they come from different places. So figuring that out, and us creating a container where we can have these differing ideas of thought, has been challenging but fascinating, and I know we're getting to a better answer through it.
Yeah, and I know even at the clinical part of this industry, they're having some of those same conversations. I know talking to Rick Doblin and some of the therapists at MAPS, they talk a lot about kind of everyone having their own inner healer and kind of
Mm-hmm.
letting the people do the work. It's not necessarily everyone gets so caught up that there's two guides, for the MAPS MDMA psychedelic assisted therapy. And if you talk to the people who are doing it, the guides, they're being trained to really let the individual kind of lead their own journey. They're there to provide some guardrails, but
Right.
and it's interesting. And I've heard both schools of thought, and it just shows how early the industry is. But I think the important thing is to be open and listen
Yeah.
and try different things and see what works. And maybe different things work for different individuals. So
Yeah.
I think that's great. So if you could talk a little bit, you mentioned some of maybe the exclusionary factors for people that may be interested. Could you talk a little bit about what is like the normal demographic of someone who is looking? Who are you guys looking to pull in to
Yeah.
your retreats? What type of people are you targeting?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty diverse group. I mean, we just had a program. We had a 72-year-old and a 24-year-old, I think, and all different career backgrounds. And but there is some themes. People are coming on this program because they feel stuck. They're like, they just want something to shift. They feel like they're not living to their fullest potential. So that's very common. They want to shake things up and they want to move in another direction. I think these programs are perfect for that. This is like right on for that. We have people that had just had some type of traumatic experience, like a death of a loved one, or they lost their job. They got a divorce, and now they're like, now what? And they want to process that trauma, and they want to move on from it, not forget it, but they don't want it weighing them back anymore. So that's like a very common theme. And I think, again, these programs can be really helpful for that. And then we have a lot of people that are like, I'm doing really well, but I'm super curious, and like I want to explore my spirituality or my consciousness, or I want to become more creative, or I want to devote my life more to service. I don't know where that's going to be, but I want to like explore, right? So these like adventurers, so we get those types as well. And we have a core program that we are intentionally like, we want a diverse group to come to, but then we're launching some new programs in 2023 that'll be focused a bit more on special, like kind of specific groups. And we have a leadership program coming out. So it'll be a similar model, but we're going to teach some leadership specific modules, right? And it's going to be the programming is going to be more focused towards how to use these experiences to become a better, more empathetic, effective leader, right? And there's a lot of interest in that. And then we have a women's program. So the modules will be based more on, it'll be all female led and all female participants. And then the modules will be around, issues that women have and how to come together and support each other. So we have a program for that. And then, we have a veterans specific program, that's close to my heart. We're doing one with Heroic Hearts in March that we're fully funding. It's in partnership with Imperial College, and we're bringing down a group of combat veterans. And then in the fall, we're looking at bringing down an entire platoon, a group of guys that went to war together, hadn't seen each other, and they're going to come down and do this work and do it. So, yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I know, we've my fund, we've diligenced a lot of different retreat companies, and real estate is always an important aspect of it. We've seen some companies who have looked to own the facility and they're raising capital to own the real estate. We've seen others that are even building out kind of a community where people could actually live on the grounds and build more of a community-based play. Then we've seen others who are leasing the property. We've seen some who are just doing temporary leases, some annual leases. So what is Beckley's strategy around the real estate aspects of this?
Yeah, I mean, so we're taking our investment dollars and we're investing in our programming and our people and the brand. And, there's a lot of retreats out there. There's few that are running this kind of integrative health, well-being approach. And you can get really sophisticated if you look at adult learning science or habit change science and think about how you structure the modules, how you sequence them, how you do the practical exercises, how many times you touch things so that you're teaching people things. You're giving people the opportunity to develop new habits. And I'm just confident that with that, we are going to have better long-term lasting outcomes. So for now, that's where we're putting the dollars, because we think that there's, incredible value there. And we'll be able to help people, in a more sustainable way. I mean, I think down the road, if, we prove the demand, which it looks like is promising, we'd be very interested in maybe building the Beckley Institute, deep in the jungles of Costa Rica or Jamaica somewhere, and have that be a flagship location for us where we do a lot of the research, and we have the Esalen of the new world, or the new age. That's the flagship property. But I think we're a couple years away from that.
And so talking about demand, obviously demand is very important for an investor, and operating year round, week by week, every day, very little interruption is important. So talk a little bit about how often you're doing these retreats. Is it every single week? Are you guys taking some time off? And how you expect that to change over a period of time so that you guys can really reach scale and generate material revenues?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been doing about one a month this year. Next year we'll do two a month. We'll be doing 20 next year, and then we have 40 that following year. And I think that we could potentially scale faster than that. But this is delicate work, and it's a new industry, and we want to be super safe and careful, and we want to grow at the right pace. I mean, I actually, this Mark Zuckerberg's like move fast and break things, I think only really applies in a few industries, and really I think you want to move at the right pace, there's just as much risk in moving too fast as there is moving too slow. And so we're going to do this work like in alignment with the natural order of things, and allow it to come to us. But we just did a market study, and I think it was the first of its kind, that asked some of these questions around retreats specifically, and it's huge. It's tens of millions of Americans are interested in doing this work in this format, and they want to do it with a reputable organization that has all the right safety protocols and knows what they're doing.
Got it. And like to talk about now the financial model. So obviously, I know Amanda is, she's doing this out of the goodness of her heart, and she's done incredible work. But this is a for-profit venture, right? And I think there's tremendous opportunity from a financial perspective. So I'd like you to walk us through just kind of your revenue model and some of the assumptions. So all the way from, how many people do you plan to see? How many of these retreats you plan to do? What are you charging for these retreats? And ultimately, what kind of revenue number does that get you to?
Yeah. So on a retreat by retreat basis, we have 15 to 20 participants, $5,000 to $10,000 for that 11-week program. So you have $100,000, in terms of gross revenue. And then from a gross margin perspective, we're 40-50% gross margin. I think that we can actually improve that. And then from a break even standpoint, I think we would break even at 25 to 30 programs a year, which we're going to get to hopefully by the end of next year, and then we'll be a cash generating business. So I mean, it's really important again for us. Like, I don't think this is a business where you want to go raise $20 million and spend it as fast as you can. It's like we're going to build a sustainable business that has all the great fundamentals. We're going to get to break even as soon as possible. And then we're in the driver's seat in terms of like how quickly we want to expand and, if we want to accelerate or not. Oh, did I lose you?
No, sorry, I put myself on mute because I was getting some feedback. Yeah, so moving on over to some of the safety issues. We've touched on it a little bit, but I know, a lot of investors, they're concerned. They want to make sure they don't know much about psychedelics. They don't know if they're dangerous, what are the risks here? So talk a little bit more about some of the safety issues and kind of what you guys are putting in place to kind of address any potential issues.
Yeah, and there is a safety component. I also think it's important to ground people in the reality. There's a really famous drug harm study that was published in 2010 out of the UK by their drug czar. It was actually designed by Amanda and the Beckley Foundation. And it looked at all of the known drugs and it racked and stacked them in terms of net harm. There was one component of the harm that was harm to self, which is propensity for addiction, toxicity on the body, and then another component of harm, which is harm to others. So this is drinking and driving, domestic abuse, and then you would end up with a net harm for each individual drug. And do you know which drug was at the absolute top?
Alcohol?
By far and away. So, and you know what drug was at the absolute bottom with, tobacco, LSD, heroin, and all in there?
I believe it was psilocybin.
Psilocybin. So I think it's important for people to kind of ground in that and know that, there's risk in everything. So what's the relative risk? And, psilocybin is exceptionally safe. With that said, there are people that should not be using these compounds, or if they're going to use them, it needs to be a whole different level of care and infrastructure and planning. And those are people with severe psychiatric disorders, bipolar, multi-personality, schizophrenia, like really severe trauma. And so the first kind of order of business is making sure you do really good screenings and have calls and screen those people out and direct them to other places where they can get the level of care they need. But then, you look at, it's a safety program like at any distributed services business. You look across all the different activities and you look at how you can mitigate risk in all those activities. And we have a plan with checklists and people that are in charge of ensuring that those checklists are followed. So everything from, the psychological safety in the sessions, then and the trauma-informed nature of the material that we're presenting, and making sure that that's all thoughtful, all the way to the transportation and people getting on the buses, and what can be done safely there, and then the safety around the sessions is really important, and that is a big function of, do you have facilitators that have the requisite training, that have done hundreds of these, that have seen some of the outlier incidents and know how to respond, and then having protocols in place for what happens if someone has a really bad experience. and so that it's not like a crisis. It's just, we have a plan and you execute the plan. So we had someone say, I think it was quite a compliment to say that it felt like our programs were run like a well-oiled military operation, and that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to hear. So let's move on to growth and scaling the business. So, you guys are currently looking to operate in Jamaica and the Netherlands. Do you see growth coming from entering other countries? Do you think maybe having multiple facilities in Jamaica, maybe just having a bigger facility in Jamaica?
Yeah.
What's the strategy as far as, you talked a little bit about 1 year, 2 year, doing more retreats as you go along and scaling this up slowly. But as you get into year 3, 4, and 5, how do you guys plan to scale the business?
Yeah. So the interim is really focused on the two core locations, Jamaica and the Netherlands. Those are close to major markets, all of Europe with the Netherlands basically, and then, New York and Miami for Jamaica. And we have one location in Jamaica now that we use frequently, but there's a couple others that we're interested in that we could grow into. But the vision for this thing is centers all over the world. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. I mean, we had a program in the Netherlands that had 7 countries represented, including countries from the East. So the world's waking up to this stuff, and they're going to want safe places to do it. And so I think that, with our approach, the asset light, we would go out and like find owner operators of retreat centers, and we would come in with our, centralized headquarters support and our programming that's been researched and tested and, is verified. And we would go in and negotiate contracts to come in and do our Beckley programming. And I think, you have some type of franchise type model where they license the Beckley name, and we support them to help run super safe programs and help them find, screened guides and help them stand up their local well-being centers. I mean, I think that we do want to get these centers closer to major metropolitan areas. So then you can kind of still have a sustainable business model, but you can get the costs way down, and then you can have, more accessible pricing options. And so that's just on like the core retreat business. And we talked about some of the iterations that we can do, so you have a whole portfolio of different retreat programs for different specialty groups. But that's just the beginning. I mean, I think we're really moving towards a more integrative health, holistic well-being model. And people are coming, having these transformational experiences with us. And then they're asking us, okay, well, what's next? And it's really hard to get someone at their highest level of well-being if their gut health is really bad, and we can diagnose that now, right? And then you can provide really custom solutions based on the diagnostics. So of course we're going to offer that to people, right? You can do a lot. You can mail people. We don't even have to build all this ourselves. This is through partnerships, but you can mail people different blood diagnostic panels, and you can give them custom supplementation. So if we believe that we can help people, we're going to offer more services, so that's what we're moving towards. And I think there's tremendous scale when you start thinking about it that way.
And speaking about being all over the world, I think that the elephant in the room is the U.S. I'm in the U.S. You're in the U.S. We just, Oregon passed the first legalized framework, and now recently Colorado passed Proposition 122. So, there's a lot of eyes right now on Oregon and Colorado, and I think what we're going to see is potentially California passing something, and I think we're going to start seeing multiple other states coming in. So, just curious if you guys are planning to get into that part of the industry. Are you watching it? What are you guys? How are you guys looking at states like Colorado and Oregon?
Yeah, we're watching it closely. It looks like there's still a lot to get figured out, frankly, particularly in Oregon. I hope that Colorado has a bit cleaner rollout of it. But yeah, for sure. I mean, we're watching it. We would love to do psilocybin programs in states where it's legal. We have some plans late next year to basically have our standard approach, but swap out the psilocybin sessions with ketamine. And that opens us up. We're actually planning to do our first US program with ketamine at one of the most iconic wellness locations in the world. So that's super exciting. But yeah, I mean, we want to get to the US, there's tons of people that can benefit from this work that, that are living in the United
Yeah.
States.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's been a bit of a mess out in Oregon. I think they're saying that over 80% of the municipalities have
Have opted
actually
out.
banned, yeah, have opted out. So, it's legal in Oregon, but depends on which municipality. And I do know some retreat companies that actually acquired property
Yeah.
in municipalities that banned it. And that's never a good situation, especially for their investors.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why I think we're saying, let's just wait, we can still build the brand, and that's what's going to be important. And so once it's clear, if we have the brand and people know that we're the standard bearer, it'll be relatively easy for us to kind of open new locations.
Awesome. Well, I have one more question for you. So if anyone has any questions, make sure you throw them in. So final question is just what are the next major milestones for Beckley over the next 6, 12, 18 months? What are you guys looking to achieve?
Yeah. Well, so 20 programs in 2023. We're launching this leadership program in collaboration with a university and bringing down some MBAs. We're going to launch we just had a pilot for the women's program, but we'll be launching like an official women's full program next year. And building out this core team and these partnerships, right? And building relationships with vets and heroic hearts and MAPS and others in this industry that are doing this work well and figuring out how we can support each other.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the Q&A. We got a few questions coming in. I'm actually surprised being that it's Thanksgiving. I thought we were the only guys that are still working at this hour, but apparently we're not. People are still tuning in. So we have from Barney Neal. He was asking if it's synthetic or natural.
We use natural. Yep.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about to the extent you could give information on the supply of your psilocybin. How are you procuring it?
Yeah, well, luckily in Jamaica and the Netherlands, because it's been legal for so long, there's actually quite developed industries there. And there's lots of local growers, and you can actually get lab grade psilocybin. You can get it synthesized or you can get it natural. We prefer the natural.
Got it. Next question is from Margaret. How large are the group sizes for the retreat? What if a company or organization wanted to buy out a retreat date? Has that happened, or would that work?
Yeah, it's usually 15 to 20 participants. And yes, we've had some groups come down. I mean, I think this is a great opportunity for us. And so we're very interested in it. And you just reach out. And of course, if a whole group's coming down, we can do better on the pricing for sure. So we can kind of do a deal that works for everyone. And actually, I think that coming with a group that already has some connection and doing this work together, and then has that group to continue doing the work together with and supporting each other is super powerful. And I think about, I mean, we're maybe not there yet for like the corporate environment, but I just think about us, we get together all the time in these corporate environments and we drink alcohol, we get drunk, and somebody always makes an ass out of themselves. And it's just like, ha, 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 it's fine. But like, what about bringing corporate groups together and really building deep bonds and getting to this like really, deep understanding with each other and thinking about problems from a whole different perspective and thinking really outside the box about stuff, like why not do your strategic offsites with some medicine work? I mean, you want to think in a new way about stuff. I mean, this is perfect for that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Next question. What conclusions have you come to for the hands-off versus hands-on approach? I guess this is getting to kind of like the inner healer versus being a more active facilitator.
Yeah. So, in the ceremonies, we're not doing psychedelic assisted therapy. So what we do is, I think we found a happy medium where if someone's having a really tough experience, one of the facilitator is free to go to them, and maybe they just need to talk for a minute, and maybe they need to go for a walk and go outside, and they can come back in. But we give the guidance that we don't want to have an hour-long psychotherapy session in this group setting with everyone else. So I would say we're probably more hands off, but then we do deeper one-on-one work before and after the sessions where it is more psychotherapy. But I hope that answered the question.
And it looks like I think Charlie was reading your mind with their next question, but maybe you want to dive deeper into it. She asked, how could this type of psychedelic model be integrated into the corporate environment on a large scale to help improve employee well-being? I know you were kind of addressing that. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts you wanted to share.
Yeah, I mean, we're there's some, my background's from McKinsey. One of our major investors is a McKinsey partner. I used to lead the mindfulness practice there. I'm hopeful we can get some senior leadership teams down and experience this work. And then I hope that they think that it might be good for their teams. I mean, there's another level of legal considerations when companies are kind of like blessing this or making it, or like kind of mandating this. But I think there's some ways to work around that for sure, and just make it optional. And then I think the smaller companies that are more innovative and more progressive, like they're coming. Like we've had family offices and small startups and tech companies that are willing to bring their, that are expressing interest and want to bring their teams down. So I think it's happening. It's going to happen pretty soon.
Yeah, and we have companies like Enthea that are providing payer programs for employers that want to provide ketamine therapy for their employees. So I'd imagine some of those similar companies that are willing to sign up with ketamine programs like that to include that as employee benefit might be interested in something like this. Last question we have from Margaret. I think this is kind of getting at, maybe the competition that might be created by Colorado and Oregon coming online, although I think it's going to take way more time than I think everyone expects. But the question is, do you anticipate the pricing model of 5 to 10K per guest with 15 to 20 guests per retreat to stay consistent as domestic locations begin to legalize psilocybin?
I think that we'll be able to get those prices down, but a lot of it's going to come out in the detail of the laws. So, in Oregon, it looks like there's stipulations around the facilitator to guest ratio. So if you got to have 2 facilitators to each guest, then it's really hard to get the price down to do this group work. And I don't think we know yet, like all of those stipulations. So it's a bit hard to say. I hope that that people see that this work actually can be done safely, like in the approach we're doing. And if we're able to run our same approach and like use local guides and have facilities that are less expensive, then the prices could come down quite a bit.
And I'll ask the final question of, if anyone wanted to get in touch with you or they were interested in a retreat, if you want to give out either the website or your personal contact, how could they get in touch to learn more?
It's just BeckleyRetreats.com. If you Google Beckley Retreats, we're the first one that comes up. And then I'm Neil, Neil, at Beckley Retreats. I mean, I love talking to people about this stuff. And if they go to the site, they can book a call with me or someone on the team. We have free webinars that are run, every couple weeks. So just find us online and reach out.
Awesome. And Neil and I will actually be doing a panel in New York at the Ludlow Soho House on December 13th. So if you're in New York the week of December 13th, shoot us an email. We're happy to get you a guest spot there. Neil, congrats. You made it through the Investor Hotseat. Thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in New York.
Thanks, Dustin. Look forward to seeing you too, man.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Have a good one.
See you guys.